Greetings, everyone. I'm Jeff Rhodes with Crossroads Consulting, where we help businesses outsource, grow, reduce costs, protect their assets. In our Tales from the HR Crypt segment, this is number 2. It's the case of the employee, the UTI employee. Now, this is going to involve some HR stuff that can be relatively delicate. It could involve ADA. It could involve different elements of HR, but you're going to want to enjoy it. Maybe take some notes and leave some comments below. Case of the UTI employee.
The next one we titled, and I'm not going to go with the initial title, but we titled this one the UTI. There, I said it. Okay.
All right.
But it's under the influence, not what most people
Case
were
of
thinking.
The UTI.
Right.
The case of the UTI.
Under the influence.
Under the influence. So we had a new employee, and he was literally fresh out of orientation. It was his second day on the job, second shift.
Why not get started early, right?
He was on break, so it was 5:30ish, and I had to follow up with him because we were missing one of his tax forms. So I caught him on break, and I'm talking to him, and I got the very and we were outside, strong odor of alcohol, very strong. And so I thought, okay, well, I need to verify that this is correct. So reasonable suspicion. You really need a second person to validate the behavior. So I went in and got a counterpart and had her interact with him, and she confirmed. So we brought him in together, and at that time I was responsible for the safety portion of the company, as well as the new employee orientation. And so she validated, and we had a conversation with him to say, we need to ask you to submit for a breathalyzer. And he said, oh, well, I haven't had anything to drink since last night. Okay, great.
Okay.
Great.
I could have spilled it on his shirt or something, right?
Absolutely. Stranger things have happened. So we ended up escorting this gentleman. Obviously, you're not going to ask this person to drive themselves to the drug testing facility. So we drove him over. He would not do a breathalyzer. He could not get enough air to register, which after 3 or 4 failed attempts, it became pretty clear to the testing agent that it was a lack of effort.
Oh.
So we did a blood draw. So it's going to take longer for those results to come back. So per company policy, you're suspended pending results. So we made accommodations called cab to get him home safely, because again, as an organization, you're already suspecting this person's under the influence. You do not want to suspect that and then put them out in the public, as that can create a huge amount of liability for the organization. So he was suspended. He was very polite. He was a good sport about it. And what was strange, no slurred speech, walked straight as an arrow, carried himself like he was not. The only thing was the smell. We got his test results, and his blood alcohol content was, are you ready for this number? 0.217.
So
which is like 2.17 it was double his what it should have been.
Well, let's say, so under the influence legally is 0.08.
0.08. Yeah, that's
so double that would be 0.116.
Yeah,
right.
0.217.
So he was on a 5-day bender.
Yeah, he's off the charts.
Absolutely. So what we ended up having was an individual who was a highly functioning alcoholic, because again, No slurred speech. The eyes, the body movements, none of the typical markers that you could observe in behavior. But he was absolutely under the influence, and his position was operating a saw, a chop saw.
Oh,
So he started on Monday, finished orientation, second day on the floor on Thursday, and terminated him on Friday.
So how did you terminate him?
yeah.
We called him up and told him that we had the test results and that he would be receiving a copy. He knew the policy. He knowingly violated the policy, and that his services were no longer needed. And we asked if he had any personal items or effects that we needed to make arrangements to get to him, and walked him through the last paycheck and all of that.
Did you have any concerns? Alcoholism is protected under the Americans with Disability Act. Did you have any concerns with that?
So here's the thing. Yes, alcoholism as a disease is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But being actively under the influence while on the job is not. So if you run in, my advice to organizations, if this is not something that they're very familiar with or they encounter rarely, and again, state to state and area to area, as far as county to county can vary, check with some legal counsel or lean into an HR resource to find out what kind of the general best practices are.
Man, that's interesting. He's got a alcohol reading that's off the charts, and he's working a saw.
Yes, absolutely.
He had all his fingers, I'm assuming, right? Could that have been some kind of a behavioral?
Obviously, had there been an accident and he would have, let's say, chopped a finger off.
Think of that. Workers' comp.
Well, the result would have been in the state where this occurred, workers' comp still would have picked it up.
Right.
They probably would have denied it, but under appeal, it would have been picked up. But nonetheless.
But then that's probably when ADA kicks in. That's when he says, well, listen, I have an alcoholism problem. And
if he brought that up, but even if you bring that up when you're caught, employers are often not required to accept that. Now, had he, during the course of his orientation process, so after being hired, disclosed that he struggled with alcoholism, then we could have worked with our employee assistance program, etc., to give him some support and provide him with the resources based on the company's policy and, again, the state in which we were operating.
Yeah, so that's really interesting that this ADA thing is really complex.
Extremely.
Yeah, and you guys, obviously, with your experience, you knew how the ADA system works. But it is odd that he didn't disclose that.
Well, who does?
Well, some people do. Some people do. As they get caught, sometimes they're fearful of losing their job, and so they'll try just about anything to save their job. Some people almost are waiting to get caught as a cry for help, and it's different. It's different.
Yeah.
Every situation that I've encountered is very, very different. And then ADA is a federal protection.
Right.
And you have to engage in those conversations, especially if certain things are brought to the employer's attention. You can't just not have conversations, and you have to be careful in what you ask. And of course, then once they share that information, it is of the utmost importance to maintain confidentiality. It does not need to be the water cooler gossip.
Well,
Oh
that's
my
a
gosh, yeah.
whole nother topic that again we
Yeah.
could spend days on, right?
Hey, the
Absolutely.
last thought I have on this case, what's interesting is he was so intoxicated, yet his behavior and his coordination didn't indicate any intoxicity, but you can't make a determination or assumption based on smell, right? Because he might have just spilled some bourbon on his shirt,
Correct.
but he's not intoxicated, and so therefore you can't afford to make a conclusion or draw a conclusion based on smell alone.
That's why it's called reasonable suspicion, and then it is verified by a second witness. And
Yeah.
if the second witness had not smelled it, then it may have gone very differently.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
All right.
fantastic story.
Oh boy, the days of HR.
Once again, we are Crossroads Consulting. I'm Jeff. He's Billy. We're available to talk to you about any issues that come up with regards to your business. Our business model is to help you find solutions. There's no cost, there's no obligation to talk to us. You've seen some of the interviews that we've done. We have a lot of resources that we can bring to the table. We welcome you the opportunity to talk to you about your business and some of the challenges that you're facing now. We'll do our best to find the solutions. Again, there's no cost, no obligation.